It's NWO Chat Radio. From the foothills of the Shenandoah, welcome to NWO Chat Radio. Your hosts, Dryx and Protocon. Remember, you can always email or live chat from our website at nwochat.info. And now, here are your hosts, Dryx and Protocon. NWO Radio.
Welcome to our latest show of New World Order Chat Radio. I'm your host, Drygex, and I've got a very special guest this evening. His name is Bruce Beach, and I'll introduce him in a moment. But if you're a new listener to the show, this show is actually tied in with our online chat channel on EFNet, and you can find us on www.nwochat.info. I'm sure you're probably listening from there. And what we do is, with the radio shows, generally we just kind of have a discussion about disaster preparedness and survival skills and those kinds of things. And I'll have to say that this has been a show. This kind of show is something I've wanted to do for a while and just never really thought about doing it. And I'm going to give some credit here to Bruce on that, because I've been following Bruce Beach for quite some time. I'm actually Virginia's team leader, and we'll explain what the team leader roles are and things like that in his Learn program. For those of you that don't know, Bruce Beach is a Radiological Scientific Officer, amongst other things. He is probably best known for his underground nuclear fallout shelter that he built himself out of 42 school buses. So Bruce, welcome to the show.
Hi there, I'm here.
So, what drew you to decide that you wanted to build a fallout shelter?
I've gone through progressive stages of that most people go through as they get into prepping, and these stages are when one becomes aware. The first thing they think about is what we call Bob, bug out bag. Something happens, I got to get out of here. And so right. I got to have some stuff ready, and I got to have an escape plan, and I'm going to get out some maps and kind of look at what route I'm going to take out of the city, because we're probably going to have to walk out. But that's where I started, like most everyone. And eventually you realize, I need what we call a BOL, a B-O-L, a bug out location. I need somewhere that I'm going to head for, where I'm going to go. And that's the next step. Of people who've been preparing for a while, they have a place where they're planning to bug out to. And then eventually people say, well, I'm serious about this, and I think the world conditions, the way things are, I'd better get out of the city. And I'm going to move out to a more remote location. Some people say, well, I've still got to work in the city, so I'm going to move my family out to as far as suburbs as I can, and maybe I'll commute. And I did that too, and I did that for years. And but eventually, circumstances for some people, and if we work towards them, we get to where we can detach from the city entirely, and we live in a place, and we go through a process of selecting what kind of place do we really want to live in.
Right.
And it's the criteria usually is you want to be somewhere that's a small enough village where there's people there they'll know you and you know them, and an agricultural area, And then people start making preparations. Well, I'm going to have a garden. I got to prepare for what I'm going to do afterwards. I got to get some skills and to make sure that I have a well. And so anyway, we go on up through these stages, and eventually some people say, well, you know, I need a shelter.
Right.
And that's what I did. I didn't start off with 42 school buses. I started off with 4. In fact, I didn't even start off with 4. By the time I built that shelter, I built a number of shelters before. And they were a single structure shelter. But this time we started off with 4 school buses, and we added more buses as time went on. And finally, I got up to 42 school buses. And we continue to work on it. I started building on this shelter back in 1980. Put in the first of the 4 school buses in 1980. And this last summer, we added a loading dock, and we added some other key features. Next summer, we hope to put up a water tower for the garden.
That'd be great.
That will be fed by what is called a water ram, a way for pumping water without having to use electricity or what. And so there's never any end. One can always prepare more and do more. And so we continue our preparations.
That's great. I didn't really realize that you started out that small. I kind of read up a little bit about, moving back to, was it Horning Mills? Is that right? Or how?
Yeah, that's where we live now,
yep.
Is up in Canada in Hornings Mills. But where I started was when I really made my first preparations was in 1958, and I lived in Chicago, right down there on Wilson Avenue next to the expressway.
That was my next question, is what drove you, what got you started?
Yeah. Well, I was concerned moving to Chicago, I thought, because I'd been concerned about it beforehand. And of course, I had come through the Cuban Missile Crisis and the not by then, that was later, but but I actually before that time had been in the military, and I was conversant and aware of nuclear weapons, and so that was my thinking about it. It was progressive, and I started out like everyone else, thinking about, well, what am I going to do to survive and to protect my family? And I was concerned about my family and what to do about them. I'm in a different place philosophically now, partly because of my age, but mainly because of years of thinking about this, that what I realize now is that we got to make preparations for society to survive. And we're all going to depart this life eventually, and my service here is to help make a better world and help society to develop. But that's, I started out like everyone else thinking about, well, what am I going to do here for my family and all?
Yeah, that's kind of what has kind of spurred me on to do the radio show. So like as I learn, hopefully the radio show will be a tool for other people to learn. Like the urban person that hasn't really thought about this very much, but I'm 20-30 miles away from where the big earthquake was on the East Coast, and that's what kind of just gave me a good push, I think. I've kind of thought about this for a long time. Always been interested in just nuclear war and the disaster that causes. I can remember I had to do a journal when I was in school. Every day I had to write in the journal, and I ended up writing like 14 pages on how I envisioned my own personal bomb shelter. And that was kind of funny. after I went and sat and looked at how many pages I'd written. But
well, people call me a one-stringed instrument because I always talk about nuclear war, because a disaster can take many forms, and there are many things that threaten us, and one builds upon the other. Nuclear wars may be accompanied by societal collapse, economic collapse. They themselves may bring on things of a nature like pandemics. And so there are many, many sorts of intertwined disasters that's possible. And many people come looking at it from different particular viewpoints, some from a geopolitical viewpoint, some from religious prophecy, others from expectations about the Mayan prophecies or 2012 or Planet X or whatever.
right.
People are motivated by all sorts of things, but the common denominator of all this is that much of the preparation, getting out of the cities, having association with other people who are prepared and so forth, are common to all of them.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's like there's a show coming up in National Geographic called Doomsday Preppers, and I understand you're going to be on that. But for me, what you just said, nuclear war or a nuclear disaster to me is like the worst possible scenario, because it encompasses, or can encompass, so many different things, from martial law, war in general, electromagnetic pulse, radiation. You said plagues and famine. It's like an all-encompassing, barrel of doom kind of thing, bucket of doom, whatever you want to call it.
The thing is that any rational person looking at the way that it would be and what could transpire, and given the weapons that we have today, nuclear war isn't survivable, and they're quite right about that. And from a religious point of view, in the Bible, Jesus said to people, and except those days be shortened, none would survive, not even the very elect. And this is the thing that people who are just come at it from an intellectual point of view don't have. They don't have this confidence that circumstances are going to be such that there's a divine will, divine destiny, that while there's going to be this great conflict that some people call Armageddon, that whatever it is, that while it would just wipe out the whole of humanity, that it's the divine will that it's going to be shortened. Now, some others go to the other extreme on that, and they say, well, some people say God would never let it happen. And that's kind of for people who are religious, kind of a weak point, because if I don't know what the basis of their religion is, but in most of the religious scriptures of the world, it tells about this great catastrophe that will happen. And then they say, well, that they feel that they have a relationship to God, that they're going to be protected. They see something such as rapture or what, that it's not going to happen to them. And that was a funny thing. We did a survey a few years ago and asked how many people thought that there was going to be this great disaster. And, not that many did. I forget, I guess about 20, 30, 40% maybe did. But they thought it'd be decades away. And the few who did think that it would be in some time fashion that they needed to make preparation for, was only about 1 or 2%. And when we'd conducted this as a very scientific survey, but we didn't put a question on there. We just added it on later. What kind of preparation are you making?
I remember that coming through. You also do an emailed newsletter, and I remember that survey that you were talking about. See, I don't think I ever really saw the responses though, so it's good information.
Yeah, well, only a couple of percent thought that they should make preparation, and when we asked them of what kind of preparation they were making, 80 or 90% of them had the same answer. I've given my life over to the Lord Jesus Christ, and either they're going to be raptured or they're going to be taken care of once it happens. They'll depart this life, and that's all that counts. And so that's the preparation that they had made. And so for people, less than 1% of the North American population make any preparation of the type that you're discussing on this program.
And now, how long ago was that? Was that shortly after September 11th, or?
I think I'd have to look it back up. Time just flies by on me. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago.
That's what I thought. I think it was after, but slightly. I think before it. So.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There are more people today who are concerned. It's a growing concern on the part of many people. But on the other hand, the most standard responses that you still get from people is, "Oh, I wouldn't want to survive it anyway. I'd hope the bomb would fall on me if it was going to happen." And for the most part, I just don't think about those things. It's always been a threat. One just has to get on and live their daily life and not worry about it. And so they're still, with the threat as it is today, while I haven't redone the survey, I doubt that there's 5% of the population that is making any preparation today. If it's doubled, tripled, or quadrupled over what it was, then it's still those small numbers.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Be kind of curious to see that, because to me lately, it seems like that prepping and disaster preparedness is becoming more mainstreamish, I guess, because you've got TV shows starting up, and a lot of people are found on YouTube for these shows. I did have another quick question for you. So, nuclear winter. I was wondering if you could explain that and what your thoughts on that are.
Well, one hears all these threats today. We're either going to freeze to death with nuclear winter, or we're going to burn up with climate change, or whatever, or one extreme or the other. But I don't hold to any one prediction about it. The thing about nuclear winter is that we do have historical evidence that there have been some gigantic volcanic explosions back in history, and we're talking in almost geological time. We're talking about 10,000, 70,000 years ago, and that the ash was sometimes numbers of feet deep for hundreds of miles away from these volcanoes, that they put out so much ash, and they put it up into the atmosphere, and it dropped the temperature of the planet 2 or 3 degrees, and that doesn't always astounds me when we seem to have that much weather change right now over average of what an average season is. We're having a very warm winter up here in Canada this year, and we still have snow. It's still below freezing every night. Sometimes during the day it gets up above freezing, but 2 or 3 degrees difference. They seem to feel that on a world scale, it affects the agricultural bands and all to such a degree that it could cause major problems. And if there were a nuclear war, we would put up possibly into the atmosphere such clouds of dust that it would be like a volcano, and it would, and we could affect the higher regions, the stratospheres, and so forth, and bring on this cloud cover, which we call the nuclear winter. And even if it lasted 2 or 3 years, a season, before it rained back out, that would be a very disastrous effect upon agriculture for that time. I can think of much more dramatic scenarios that could happen and may happen. Whatever things that do happen, there will probably be some remnant of humanity, and how we're going to deal with situations. And we'll have many situations that we have to deal with, and that's only one. So that hasn't been an end-all concern with me.
Right. That's kind of, how I feel about it. I can remember watching, and I never really watched it until recently, a movie called Threads. You're probably familiar with it.
I've certainly heard of it. That's why I haven't never seen it.
It's if you've seen The Day After, the made-for-TV movie,
yeah,
it's like
that
the
was filmed
British
out there in Lawrence, Kansas.
Right, that's it. I couldn't remember the name of the town, but it's like the British Threads is the British version of that movie with a much darker undertone to it, and I think that feeds into the nuclear winter myth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, anyway, we just about this, really, from my perspective, have to both put our trust in God about these things, and we have to take the human steps that are necessary to do it. And you can't say, well, I'm just going to put my trust in God. If you put your trust in God, you got to say, well, okay, what's He guiding us to do on this? And the things we need to be guided to do are, number one, I always tell people, is get out of the cities. And famously, I say, number two, the thing they got to do is get out of the cities. And number three is get out of the cities. 1, 2, 3 is the most important thing, is to get out of the cities. But beyond that, one needs to have a plan for recovery, so that for being able to grow a garden, having agriculture, and most importantly, of being able to cooperate with others. The number one concern, if you're out of the cities and have a place and so forth, is going to be security. And for security, you can't plan to stand off the world by yourself.
Right.
You have to be associated with other people.
Yeah, I kind of agree that, that society has always drawn people together, throughout history. So if you don't have a network of friends, or you're not very close to your neighbors, there may be, you may be able to survive for a little while, but if you don't communicate with them, then it might be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, and more than that, the many people have something of an idea there that they're going to have a survival group or their little community or whatever, but there will always be a larger one that they have to be prepared against, and so they always have to extend out the perimeters and unite with more and more people, and the broader the basis for security, the safer that you'll be.
Yeah, exactly. So, and one of those aspects is communication, and you're starting. I know you're talking about using PSK 31, which is amateur radio for communicating. Can you explain a little bit of that and where the project is on that?
Well, we've studied this out, and we have a marvelous plan. Unfortunately, it has taken me much longer to implement it than I wish that it were. We thought we would have it implemented in 3 months, and now it has been over a year, and we still don't have it in place. But a number of people have funded this project, and our goal is to build some prototype radio equipment that each one would have a unit of this. And we went down several false paths with engineers who thought they could do it, and they weren't able to. And we're somewhat still in that position. We're very, very close. We have a little bit of the circuit that's still not finished, though. And at this particular point in time, the engineer who's working on it has gone on vacation. He's due back next week, and I hope that he'll pursue on this and get it done. I had hoped he'd finish it before he went on vacation. And because these people do this largely on a volunteer basis now, other things that are earning the money take priority, and we can't get them folded in on that. But what's being designed is a little radio that will cost less than $200. And this radio will give people a reliable means of communication for 200 or 300 miles around them. And the system that we will use for communication is what you referred to as PSK31. It's a digital system, and it works through a computer. You have to make the system work, you'll have to have 12-volt batteries, and if your computer doesn't work on 12 volts, an inverter to run off these car batteries that you can pick up somewhere to run your computer and to run through this radio. And then you just type into the computer like you do for email, and you send this off. There are store and forward programs available for PSK31. We are not going to get that fancy. Our email will be more like Skype. The other person really sort of needs to be there for you to send it to them. I'm not even sure that's true with Skype. But when you're online, the person has to be online at the same time that you are, and they have to get that. Now with radio, it works a little bit different. When you send out your message, hundreds of people can be reading that message, and so you can communicate to a great number of people at the same time.
Yeah, that's ham radio is something that I'm trying to get into. I'm still trying to take my technician test so that I can get my license and everything. But it's definitely something that, I really like the idea of PSK just because, it's just the way that you can type messages back and forth, and it doesn't take a whole lot of power to do it. My question would be, is what about like during an EMP situation? What's the best way to protect your equipment from that?
Well, EMP is really much more unknown than many people think. We hear about, there being 3 or 4 EMP bursts over North America will wipe out all of the electrical grid, and people just see it kind of painting the whole of the country in one paint, one color, dead. But EMP may work more like a lightning strike or even an earthquake. You have lightning, and it will strike here, there, and elsewhere. It doesn't strike every spot. And an earthquake will happen up in one big center, and it will travel for miles, hundreds of miles, being felt. But it follows strange lines in doing it. You don't get it everywhere. And so there may be spots that the EMP does not affect. Now, truly, it may well pull down the whole of the electrical grid, but does not mean that it's going to destroy every thing that's on the grid, or every computer, or every automobile that has a computerized system in it, that anything with computers anywhere are toast. It may, and it may come close to it, and it may be that it will wipe out 90% of them. But if it wipes out 90% of them, that still leaves a whole lot of pieces of equipment that you can go around and say, oh, here's a working one. We'll use this one. And you can get things back up and going with that particular one. Now, that's how I envision EMP working. That there's somebody somewhere, you're going to find some units. Maybe they have to be offline, but there are going to be some stores around that have some back in their storerooms that weren't hooked onto anything, that were still in their packages, and this one or that one's going to survive here or there. There's going to, I think, be some working equipment around that can be gotten. Now,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. On the other hand, to protect your equipment, and what we're planning to do, and people are concerned about this, and rightly so, you have to have what's called a Faraday cage. Now, what a Faraday cage is a metal cage, and the thing that you're protecting has to be inside that cage and completely isolated from the metal walls of that cage. The cage itself has to have a wire going from the cage down to ground. The very plan that we planned for this is to try to get to store these things in buckets. and the dream that I have, and I don't know if I'll achieve that or will even get all this built in time to get it out to people, but the dream that I have is it'll be shipped to them in a paint bucket. And the unit itself isn't that large. I hope we keep it small enough that it'll fit inside the paint bucket, and that there will be insulation all around it that isolates it completely from the sides of the paint bucket. The people will get their paint bucket, and they have the metal handle on the paint bucket, and we'll send them a little clamp that's a clamp onto that handle, and they will have a wire that runs from that clamp over to another clamp that they clamp onto a cold water pipe in their house. And this cold water pipe will then go to the city water main, or if they have a well, down to the incoming well or whatever. But it'll be grounded, and then the EMP will not affect their unit sitting in there. This means that once they get their unit, if they're going to test it and look at it and try it out, they can do that. But then to protect it, they have to put it back away in its paint bucket and put the lid on it and leave it hooked up to the cold water main. And this will protect their unit from the EMP. Now, in actual usage, we don't plan to really activate this net until 2 or 3 weeks after hostilities end. And there won't be any more EMP happening then, in my paradigm, my view of the world.
Right.
All the hostilities of that sort, where we're still setting off these bombs, aren't going to be one set off this month, next year, and next 5-10 years. There's these bombs. No, I think that all that business will be over in 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe even 2 or 3 days, and then we won't be having more nuclear weapons. So that when we hook up these radios, then you don't have to worry about the EMP.
Yeah, because I've been wondering, about like ammo cans or something like that, and maybe they make them. What do they call those netbooks? The really small, like laptop computers. About having like one of those insulated inside of an ammo can or something along those lines, might be, somewhat EMP proof-ish, I guess, resistant. Yeah. I'd say.
All good ideas. The only thing is, how many people will do it? I don't know.
Right, and that's the key there. So I'd like to just talk about your books really quick, and then maybe see if anyone wants to join us on Skype or ask some questions. They can message me on Skype, and I'll ask them, or through the chat channel, which is on the front page of the website as well. So you have 2 books, is that correct?
Well, I've written a number of books.
Okay.
But the 2 books that we're concerned about here at the moment are on the subject of society after Doomsday. And in that book, I describe how communities must organize and the steps they have to go through to organize and the things they have to do for people to survive in a community. And the other book that I've written, and just in the last month we've gotten it published and out there, is called Triad. And Triad is applicable to today, of how we're going to try to set up these networks to get people organized today in preparation. And so those are the 2 books I have. Triad for today. The triad techniques are useful afterwards too, but that one is a thing that can be immediately implemented. The principles that are explained in Society After Doomsday society won't do those things, or people won't do those things, or be willing to do those things until afterwards.
Is that written, Society After Doomsday, is that written as a fictional story, or is it?
Society After Doomsday?
Yes.
Are you asked about? Both of them have examples in them that are fictional in nature, but both of them are practical how-to books, what to do. And neither one of them is what you'd call a fictional story. In Society After Doomsday, I for several chapters, do create a scenario of what would happen on with nuclear war on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, how you would find things in this way for, and then eventually moving into the condition things will be a month after, 6 months after, a year after, 2 years after, 3 years after, 4, so forth, saying the changes and how things will be in that way. So there's a timeline and a description of it, but there aren't characters, individuals, that we follow the story of somebody through those times. It isn't a fictional story in that way. The other book, Triad, has a number of steps and stages, and there are little stories. I got 20-some writers, I think it was, to come in and write a story about each one of these scenarios and cases and how you apply on a triad. And so it has, I forget what there are, 200-300 word stories, very, very short stories, and giving an example of how to apply a triad in that situation.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll link to those books on our website. So if anyone's interested in getting them, they can. You also wanted to talk about, kind of, I guess, what our original intent for our chat room is, the New World Order, and your philosophy and ideas behind that. I've read it a few times in your newsletters, and sometimes, I think people misunderstand can misunderstand your philosophy, but I'll go ahead and let you explain that.
Okay. Well, one of my website pages that I put out there is called New World Order Philosopher. And I tell people, I'm glad to talk with them about this. Many people today, New World Order is an emotional word to them. It's to say to them you're in favor of New World Order, it's almost like saying to them that you're in favor of communism, which is an emotional word to them, or that you're in favor of the Antichrist, which is an emotional word to them. And so New World Order to many people falls into that category. But in fact, what we're saying about a New World Order is that things are not going to be the way they are today. We're going to live in a world where things are just different from the way they are today. That's what the New World Order is. Now, what the New World Order is going to be like, there are many visions of that and ways that might be. And there are powers in the world today who plan for a New World Order which fits their particular image. And there isn't one single image for this. And there are great powers in the world that want it. China has things, and it's a statement just believed firsthand by people in China, that this century belongs to China. And there are old guard people there who see that as a system of socialism, communism, and so forth. And so that's one of the views would be a communist state of New World Order if that particular group had their way. There's when George Bush, the former president of the United States, spoke of the New World Order, he had a particular vision, and his vision is the expressed by people who speak of the new American century, and that this is a world order of capitalism, and that these the corporations and the great powers there that are going to establish the world order in their particular view. And there's many people of a particular philosophy in the Middle East of Islam who think that this coming century is going to be the fulfillment of the promises of Islam. Islam and Sharia law is going to be imposed all over the world, and that's their view of what that this Sharia law from the Quran is going to be imposed upon the world. That's the new world order that they anticipate. And there are Christians who think, well, that Christ is going to return in the way that they imagine, and he's going to sit on his throne, and he's going to rule the world for 1,000 years. And this will be the new world order for the next 1,000 years. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not going to be Christ. Someone think it's going to be the Antichrist who's going to rule the world. That's the new world order that they expect. So there's many, many visions that people have of what this new world order is going to be like. And the thing that I propose is that in the aftermath of some great catastrophe, nuclear or whatever, that is going to greatly reduce the human population and create circumstances of regarding the present technology and one thing and another, that we're going to build back another world. And what kind of world are we going to put back? And some people say, oh, well, the thing we want to put back is the world that was envisioned by the founding fathers of the United States, and a world of the U.S. Constitution. Well, that is certainly a document that's not observed in any way. And I doubt that they'd want to observe it as the founding fathers did. They were mostly slave owners, and slaves and women weren't allowed to vote back then. And anytime some lady says to me, we need to get back to the founding fathers, I said, oh, you mean you don't want to be able to vote? And that wasn't all that long ago. We're kind of older people, but my wife, when she was born, she wasn't considered a person. And now today, there's this whole big argument that the United States, back in the days of the Constitution and up until the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, blacks were not considered persons. They were considered property of the United States.
Right.
And so at that time, people were property. And persons, what we call persons today, were property. And now today, the Supreme Court has just passed this new law that they say corporations, which are property, are persons. Both of these are kind of extreme ideas here. And so it's these kind of ideas. What kind of world do we want to put back afterwards? And for whatever period of time it may be, sometimes Chinese dynasties went on for great numbers of centuries, but anything that humanity places here, God's creation is eternal, but our human systems will come and go. But we're going to build a system, hopefully for a long time, is going to be a better system than what we have. And that's what we're talking about, a new world order. And so that's the question I want to ask people. How do you want to put things back afterwards? You want to put it back just like it is now? If you do, you're going to have the same result, the same injustices, the same problems.
Yep, I agree. I definitely agree with you. If you don't want that,
what do you want?
And that's kind of my philosophy, at least has been since, I've been in the chat channel. To me, New World Order is more about a discussion about globalism, globalization, and, those kind of aspects, and just, the major news stuff. But it's more, when you say New World Order, it can be like capital letter New World Order kind of thing, and that modern, I guess the modern idea of it is the conspiracy theory that, rich people control the planet kind of thing, which, I guess they kind of do, but, or the little capital, and that's more like a paradigm shift of something's occurred and now the world has changed.
Yeah, well, that is it, and like I said, there are people, the Rothschilds and all these people who want to control and are in control at the moment of a large part of the world, but they aren't in control of the whole of the world. They aren't in control of China. They aren't in control. Some people think they may be, but they aren't in control of Germany. They aren't in control of some of the monarchies or various groups in the Middle East under Islam and all. There's no, and people speak of the Illuminati and this different groups that they see these conspiracies that the people are in control, but there's nobody in control of it all. There are many different conflicting ideas. And so but then one of the things that many people are very opposed to is the globalism. Well, we don't want one world government, and that's going to work on towards and many other things. A world economic system, a world monetary system, a world system of the world language, world religion. No, none of that. Don't want any of that. And and the UN to them seems very threatening. We want to get rid of the UN. And one of their slogans is get the UN out of the United States and the United States out of the UN. Now, I have one question, and if any people come on your talk show and can give me an answer to this, I've asked this of people time and time again. In a world with nuclear weapons, how in the world are you going to have peace without a world government? And so, unless you want continuous nuclear war, you're going to have a world government.
That's a pretty interesting question.
What kind of world government that's going to be and how that's going to be formed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I know a lot of people, hate on the UN and stuff, but to me that's just common sense, diplomacy. The one issue I do have with the UN, though, is more the Security Council, and the top 5 permanent members are also the top 5 world arms dealers, and it's the US, China, and Russia. Those are the top 3. I can't think of the other 2 off the top of my head.
Well, France have made providers to it, and the UK
right
is another.
Yep, that's what someone just mentioned in the chat room. Russia, England, and France are the other.
Yeah. So there's somebody listening here to your show at the moment. He would like to speak. He's just sent me a message here from.
Okay. This
is Richard.
Okay.
And he's saying no world government. He's very emphatic about this.
Right.
So,
Yeah, but I part
And
of
this place, I'll
me.
be fine.
Yeah, from a world government perspective, sometimes I wonder if that would even work, because people strive on conflict, and it's like they can't better themselves without going through something harsh. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't. It's like running up a hill, when you're running up the hill, it's really tough, really hard, it's a struggle, but once you get to the hill, it's an amazing feeling, and then everything is like a smooth sail on down.
Yeah. Well, the what's going to transpire here, and I'm if we can't hear from Richard here at the moment, I'm certainly eager to hear from him personally. What his
Yeah, if Richard, I know Richard's still listening. Just send me a quick message on Skype, and we'll add you if you're still interested in joining the voice chat. I'm curious to see how, not to necessarily change subjects, but how the whole Iran stuff is going to play, because I'm seeing it more and more on the morning talk shows, on the Today Show, that usually do silly fluff pieces.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying earlier, more and more people are becoming concerned about this, and I certainly see more concern, and it's a very popular item right now with numerous shows, and I think in the next couple of months we're going to see much more about it. From the National Geographic is about to do their new season on it, and some others are about too. And it's a popular topic right now, and it's being pressed on by the number of aircraft carriers and one thing or another gathering in the Middle East at this moment, and the number of armaments, very, very large bombs and all are being deployed there, and numbers of rockets and anti-rockets and number of troops, and everything's gathering there, boy, in great numbers for something. And so many people see this as the gathering for the battle. I've always thought it might be still a couple of years away, but I'm not a prophet, and I don't know.
Right.
And there are many people are concerned that the current predictions are April from a lot of people, and certainly, on the other hand, others are saying certainly before the elections in November. That depending on the way things go, and so who knows? I don't have any prediction about all this.
I'm going to go ahead and add Richard here. I believe he's from Wyoming.
That's right.
See if I can add him here. Yeah, I've noticed it a little bit. I kind of think that, they say that Israel's getting ready to attack or whatever, but I think that in the next, I would see more towards the end of summer, because if you're going to have a ground conflict, it would be much more difficult during the summertime. Richard, are you there? I don't know if he can hear us or not.
Hi, Richard. Can you hear us? I don't know. Maybe Richard doesn't have a microphone.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I can't remember whether I've chatted with him by voice or not in the past. Just 1 second here. I'll switch over here and see if what I can see of Richard. I think I can switch away. I hope I can come back to you.
Yeah, you should be able to click on his name on the left-hand side and chat with him.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to send him a message here.
Okay.
Are you still hearing me?
Yes, I can still hear you perfectly
Okay,
fine.
well, I can do two things at once here.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just typing a message.
Hey, Richard, can you hear us?
I just sent him a message.
Okay.
We'll see if he sees it.
Anyway, so yeah, one of the rumors that's been going around the last couple days is that they're sending the USS Enterprise out to the Gulf to get blown up by Israel and blamed on Iran.
Or whatever. Yeah, we see all that. Well, okay, I think I'm about to get a message from Richard in a moment here. So,
Okay.
yeah, well, it's on all sides. And the one that is hard for us to fathom is that there may be a difference in cultures about how people there look, what they see as a destiny. That some of the people, the Ayatollahs and Ahmadinejad, what all may really see a destiny to the world, that they believe it, just like fundamentalist Christians do here, that Christ is returning and they're going to be raptured, and whatever they think that way, they think that the destiny for the world is their Muslim beliefs, and this isn't going to happen until this conflict occurs, and they're not afraid of the conflict because they're not afraid of death, that they are willing to have their lives go so that this great destiny that they look for is going to occur.
One of
Richard
the
says, yes, please restart the chat. He can't.
okay.
How do we restart a
Just
chat? I don't.
I'll add him here. See if he can hear us again. Hey, Richard.
Yes, I am here.
Welcome.
There. You got
Welcome.
it. Can you hear me also, Richard?
I hear you perfectly well. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, Richard, you made this comment here on a written comment that I saw come across my screen here. You said no world government. They will turn against. So I would like to ask you the question. If we don't have a world government, how do we prevent nuclear war?
Well, I will be perfectly honest with you there's difficulties in that. However, the vast majority of nations, due to our past actions, will be against North America. Well, I will be perfectly honest with you.
Hey, Richard, can you turn your radio down a little bit, please?
Sure. I'll kill that right now.
Yeah,
Sorry
not a problem. It's just getting a little feedback.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was. I was sitting here meditating. What is this noise? Okay, yeah. Still with us, Richard? Whoops, lost him again.
Yeah.
No, I'm right here.
He's still here.
Okay.
Seem to have some delay in this.
I still get an echo, I think, when you speak, or I speak. Well, we're getting feedback there somehow, but anyway, I hope it's not too disturbing to people. Okay, but would you say other nations are going to be opposed to us, meaning North America, the United States, the Western world, the democracies in the world? And
I'm primarily concerned with Bruce. I'm primarily concerned with North America.
Yeah. Okay. And so this is very much so we see right now in the United Nations that there is a conglomeration here of Muslim countries that have gotten together and they're sort of voting as a bloc to affect things. And we also see right now regarding the United States ambitions, desires regarding action in Syria, that China and Russia are standing against the United States. And so what you're saying is quite true, that there, and I can point out the other blocks of what we call the South versus the North.
Can I interject for one moment, sir?
Yeah.
I do have a problem with our interventionist policies. It's why I'm a supporter of Ron Paul. I think a lot of our world problems would diminish considerably if we didn't have an interventionist policy. And I do not support the current interventionist policy. However, there are very, very, very many other nations who have negative and very serious problems with the U.S. outside of its interventionist policies, and I would like to see those. I don't trust most of the world. I don't trust my own government. I certainly don't trust foreign governments.
Yeah, I think we're defining the problem here well enough, and we see this, and as I said earlier, that China, and it's just given as an accepted fact in China, that this century belongs to China, and China plans to rule the world in the eyes of those people who hold that philosophy there. And they're spreading out, and they're buying all reports throughout the world, and they're just positioning themselves to be a world power in that regards, and Russia sees that too, and we have the group we call the BRIC, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and they make up a big chunk of the world's population. On the other, and we will define separate from them another group, which is the Muslims, and they see that the destiny belongs to Sharia law, and the Muslim faith who's to them has been prophesied. It's a given thing that it's to rule the world, that all the world's to fall under this Sharia law and Muslim. So there are many diverse views. My question still remains to you: what is the solution?
There isn't a solution.
Huh?
There is no solution, because the question is not A or B. The question becomes not A or not B, and it is an unsolvable problem.
Well, okay. Now, when you say that, then if we're going to have this conflict, it's insolvable, and at this moment, I have to agree that that it's on a converging course here between this view of the Muslims, this view of the communists, this view of the capitalists, this view of the other emerging what we call third world groups, that that we see this not convergence, divergence it really is.
Divergence, yes.
Yeah, but this conflict, we are all rushing to this intersection at full speed, and nobody's putting on the brakes, and we're coming. And I think we're all agreed that the world is about to go through this great catastrophe.
Yes, sir, we are.
Is, what are we to do afterwards? Are we going to put it back like it is? Are we going to continue this conflict? Are we going to get ready for the next nuclear war 20 years hence? What is it you want to occur after the conflict?
Oh, sir, it has nothing to do with what I want to occur. It has to do with what will occur.
Okay.
The question is I believe that a world government is incompatible with freedom.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but what I'm asking you is what is going to occur after this conflict? What will the world be like for your children's grandchildren? What will it be like 50 years hence? And not how do you want it to be? Are you going to say, let's just continue on and have the next nuclear war?
Well, sir, if as you're well aware, I'm promoting your book very heavily, and I'm making that mandatory reading within my group. I'm going to do everything within my power to promote a functional society that we can all work within. However, to promote a functional society that we can all work within. However, in the world scheme, that is simply a fallacy. It's not going to happen. Not in the world scheme.
Yeah. Well, I admit this. I tell people that I do not imagine that my view is somewhat utopian, and while I would love to see the whole of the world adopt it, I'm pessimistic that will transpire, and unfortunately, I think these conflicts will continue. I don't think there will be I think that humanity will get together enough for a while anyway to establish systems of order that will prevent nuclear war for some period of time, but eventually we'll end up there again.
Yes, sir, I agree.
Yeah, I kind of agree that, that although, a nuclear war would be something pretty devastating, that maybe people will wake up and decide, let's not do this again. One thing I have a question on, and that's the economic perspective of the Iran situation. Iran has started to do its own oil exchange, and it's starting to take oil for gold, which I guess threatens the U.S. dollar, because oil's traded in U.S. dollars.
Under the reserve currency, yes.
Right, it's the reserve currency. So I'm wondering if that, that's a big push for Iran to, be the next target.
Unquestionably, we've done it multiple times before. Since the 76 agreement of the reserve currency, where we didn't drill for our own doggone oil, we have been under this auspice of protecting our currency, and quite frankly, our currency is worthless.
And what I find interesting, you say the currency is worthless, is that, the Federal Reserve right now has this idea to make the currency more worthless, and that's going to offset the trade deficit, so we end up with more manufacturing jobs here. So I just kind of was amusing myself with that thought the other day when they said that manufacturing was up in the U.S.
Up from what? 0 to 1%?
Yeah, something like that. I think they added like 300,000 jobs, I guess, in the last year in manufacturing jobs, but it's
The
it's far from where it should be.
Total unemployed has increased, and the way the numbers are manipulated, to give a message that's entirely false. But the facts are that in the world, there are almost 200 million people, and probably this is a low number, but I just read this number today, 200 million people unemployed. In the United States right now, the official figure is 11.3 million, but in fact, there's probably 23 million by other ways of counting this that are unemployed, which is almost double the number of people that were unemployed during the Great Depression in the United States. And when we talk about percentages, that percentage doesn't really mean anything to a person who's suffering, and there's that number of people who are suffering today. The suffering today is somewhat different from the suffering that there was during the Depression, because we do have a more of a social safety net in some ways for people that we didn't have, but it's still very, very severe for people, and the situation will continue to deteriorate, and there are many factors pushing on this, oil being one of them, and but whatever conditions you point at, it's bringing on social collapse and global catastrophe without it getting in and arguing about the nitty-gritty of this detail, that detail, that it's the dollar, it's inflation, it's the Federal Reserve, it's the bank, it's this policy regarding that, it's what this country is doing or that. This catastrophe is just about upon us. And my concern, and the only place, I'm the only one that I know of. I wish that someone would point out to me someone else who's speaking beyond the catastrophe. What are we going to do afterwards? The catastrophe is unavoidable. It's going to happen, and we can just dwell on that. But who's talking about what are we going to do afterwards? And that's what we need to make plans for now.
Right. And I think, Perusa, you're probably the only person that I know of that's, thought about that. I can remember, you had that CDs, those like 30 some odd CDs that we all had to download as team leaders. And you had the free CD that you wanted us to mail to people, and I figure I'll tell you this, and then just before we sign off here, I put it online for people to download. It's been downloaded over 9,500 times.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's just from one website. The other CDs that you've got, the other recovery information, you said for us to hold on to that, and I want to ask you: is that something that we could put up? I could put up online for people to download?
Well, that's a little difficult because that was proprietary, and I don't know if somebody might come after you on that, but I went ahead and shared it with all of our team leaders so it would be archived and available to people. But that was developed by I guess under government grants. So how I'm going to finesse that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to do some looking, because there may be acceptable use. I think you can copy things for education, that kind of thing, and I think to me that's what that would fall under, I would imagine.
Well, this is the second astounding piece of information today. Richard, with his group, has 30 people in his group, and it makes the requirement for people joining his group that they read Society After Doomsday. What? Maybe the world's going to change here drastically, and people are becoming aware, and we may have a lot of changes here in the next couple of months.
Yep, I agree. Bruce, thank you for being able to join us on the show this evening. Richard, thank you for being able to join in the last half here.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. This is New World Order Chat Radio. If you'd like to find out more about Bruce Beach, Ark2, or any of his books, www.webpal.org. That's www.webpal.org. And our website...
webpal.org.
Yep, sorry.
Webpal. W-E-B, the webpal, P-A-L.org. Right.
Yep, and our website is nwochat.info. You can come into the channel anytime. It's usually pretty busy. We chat about all kinds of different things.